undisciplined? Okay, so because I am naturally undisciplined, I actually have great capacity to become very disciplined in a very specific way. But I also, being undisciplined, guess what that leaves me free to be? What? Flexible. It means I can move in the moment. It means I don't stress hardly at all about anything that is even 5 minutes into the future because I'm very present. So there's some gifts that come with that. And if I was judging myself all the time and saying, wow, I'm not very disciplined, I should be more disciplined, think of all the energy that would take and what a waste of energy instead of me showing up undisciplined and ready to go anytime. And it's so fun once I realize that. It's such a fun place to live. So think of another one. So what did you say back there? Overly sensitive. So your heart, like your heart's just like, yeah, some of you guys, your hearts are like bigger than your bodies, right? That's a hard way to live in this world because it feels like all the time you're just exposed and the world is just like taking its, jabs at you, right? So being overly sensitive, it could feel like a very victim position. But what would be the gift of being overly sensitive? Very understanding. What else? Can we close that door? Can we close that door, you guys? Can we close the door? Yeah, I need it closed very much. Say it again. Empathy. Compassionate. Yeah. So being overly sensitive. So here's the thing. You want to stop apologizing for being overly sensitive. You want to say, I am overly sensitive. Oh my goodness, I've been given a gift to be overly sensitive. It's trusting God, trusting your Creator and saying, He made me overly sensitive. I shouldn't tone it down. I shouldn't be excusing it. I shouldn't be apologizing for it. And as long as you are looking outside of you for other people to validate you, you're going to feel like a lot of your gifts are not gifts. You're going to feel like they're things that you wish you could change about yourself. But as soon as you start saying, wait a second, what if I was made this way on purpose? And then you think, and then what to do with it? And the funnest thing for me as I've learned all of this work is that, all of this about people as I sit with them, is that I don't even know what all the gifts are. Like it's not even... I feel like we've just begun to discover what they are, and the gifts are many and they're multiple. So, and it isn't for me to name. So a lot of people will say, "Well, do you see auras?" This is one area where people get into a very linear way of thinking. So, do you guys understand how I see auras? Do I see them? No. What do? The information in the bit of light, for whatever reason, goes into me, and I can name it. If I had any idea that there was supposed to be a certain way for me, I wouldn't have heard that, right? And it came to me because as I would sit with people, I could feel their need and desire to know themselves, and I just have the ability to be fully present with someone, fully, for them, because that's what an empath can do. They're not there anymore. They're just present for the other person. And I do that. I've been doing that my whole life. I didn't know I was doing that. I didn't know it was a gift. In fact, I used to think, where did I go? Where am I? Where do I even exist, and what is my identity? I mean, I had the funniest thing that I wrote a book called Aura Personalities is that I don't know anybody with a higher identity crisis than me until I meet people with my personality. But just really quickly, all of you consider for a second, one of these categories for yourself. This is physical, environment. Oh, I'm really warm in here. Help me. Mental. Well, help me. Can you guys even read this? Yeah, okay, so body, physical environment, mental, emotional, and then spiritual. So just for a second, if you could consider one of these ways of taking in information, and one of the best ways to do it is to think about how you've been listening to me, okay? So somebody in the body family, it's actually hard to sit here. It's hard to sit for a long period of time, so you want to move. Do I need to be done? What? Hold to my face. Oh, shoot. I'm like, on my, gross. I'm like touching it. Okay, so body family, very kinesthetic. You learn with your bodies. You feel a lot in your gut. Your body is always talking to you. Your body is always giving you information, and it's really loud, okay? So that's one way. Physical environment. They're people who pay attention to their surroundings visually. Very high spatial intelligence. And very much not concerned with people. So often not at conferences or in classes that I teach. I often do families or groups, and somebody will get brought by somebody else, and they're very practical. They know themselves really well. They don't feel like they want to talk about personalities or how people do things because they're just busy doing. Mental logic. So as you've been listening to me, and actually I'm very hard. The mental family has some of the hardest time learning from me because I'm all over the place, because I'm grabbing and I'm affected and I'm changing depending on who I'm with. And the mental family is very organized in their heads. They very much have a knowledge base, and then they build on that knowledge base. Who feels like they relate to that? Yeah. So you've been waiting for me, so if you're in this family, you've been waiting for me to start still. You're probably still waiting for me to get started. Okay, and then the emotional family, we talked about that, but everything is coming from the heart all the time. There is nothing that they're doing that is not coming via an emotional response. And think if you understand this about someone in your life. People never marry themselves. So if you're married, you're probably married to someone who is different than you are. But think of the difference if you understand that operating system that you're working from, that you're operating from an emotional one and they're operating from a physical environment one. And once you learn their language and they learn yours, then a lot of peace can come into the relationship. Spiritual family, the other name for that one is the energy family. So we're the vibers. I'm in that family. So we're just picking up on all the energy. So it's not emotional, it's not my body. In fact, I forget about my body a lot, to my detriment. And so we're just kind of like getting a scanning all the time. Things just like kind of scan through us. And it's very neutral. So if you tend to be really sensitive and it tends to be more emotional, you'll probably fit in the emotional. There's also a family called emotional spiritual, and there's one called mental emotional. So think about that a little bit and just think of that as fixed. And then to introduce some of these guys, maybe I'll have you go first, but just because you can tag on to what I've said. And then, actually, say whatever you want. But yeah, so never mind. But people who see auras, are seeing something outside of them. See, and I'm having an experience inside of me, so it took a bit to navigate that and go, okay, this is what I'm getting. But people who see them, it's seen as very distinct, and they see things that are changing, so they often will have gifts in the emotional and the spiritual family because they tend to be able to help people in the immediate moment with things that they're dealing with in their life. And most often with psychics or people who deal with the other side, or people who end up doing kind of counseling or those kind of roles, they'll have that double emotional and spiritual energy where they're bouncing between the two. So that's where people are most curious, but think of that. That's one gift, the ability to see. But there's so many other kinds of gifts in between that people just keep showing up, and we find them out. So trust that you have really specific gifts, that you have many of them, and the things that you don't think are a big deal or important about you, but you care about a lot, consider that maybe some of your biggest contributions to this world lie there. So let yourselves really consider that and have fun with it. And I can't believe I talked that fast, so thank you for listening, and we'll let these guys have some.
So I'm gonna have Billy go introduce you.
I am grateful to you, first and foremost, for giving me the gift of introducing my dear friend. Often our brightest lights are those who stand as beacons on the rockiest shores, who have faced some of the greatest storms in their lives. My dear friend Brian Kahn, as a small child, drowned in a pool. But he's still here. As a young adult, through a suicide attempt, almost passed away. And he's still here. And ultimately, just a few years ago, had you met him, it would not be the man you see here. Because through a traumatic car accident, he had to relearn how to speak, how to walk, how to talk. But through these experiences, his brain doesn't work the way that we do. He has no veil. To him, all the spirits in the room that are here now are just as real as you and I. Thank you for the honor to introduce my dear friend Brian.
Thank you, Katie Jo. That was beautiful. I've been seeing the aura since I was a young teenager, and what I first saw in the beginning was just a light around people, and a lot of times I saw it in the dark. I was around some friends who were performing, and when they get up on stage and they started sharing or talking, I saw the light in the dark, much like what a negative looks like on old film. Those of you familiar with film cameras, it was very much seeing negatives. And lo and behold, I started documenting it to myself, though I never talked about it. It took me years before I ever talked about it, just because of my own sensitivity. I didn't want to be bad, sick, or wrong. So when I got into college, sometimes I'd see light. I'd go out with someone on a date, and lo and behold, I'd see an aura around them. I'd see a bright light, and I'd share that with them, and they'd be going, "I've had an awful day today. What do you think that means?" I go, "Oh, God loves you." And a lot of times the messages would start coming to me. And to fast forward, about 10 years ago, I started doing some holistic healing. And I've had other some gifts given to me divinely, and I call them light tools. And part of the gifts that came to me was a medical intuitive, where I'm able to go into someone's body and see what's going on. Usually they'll talk to me a little bit. And a lot of times, as I'm talking to them, all of a sudden their aura will show up. And a lot of times I'll see the outer layer. Sometimes I see colors, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just white light. But a lot of times what I'll see energy in the aura. And a lot of times that energy is kind of a dark energy. And I don't really put a label on it or anything. Sometimes I see other things that are attached to the body. Many times people talk about feeling like somebody stabbed them in the back. And so I'll see something that looks like that. And I'll usually ask, and it's easy for me to connect to my higher power, God, someone call it source. And I'll ask whether it serves or not to take that out or to remove the energy.